All right, welcome everybody to tonight's Citizens Academy session. Tonight we're talking about the Planning and Development and Code Compliance Department. If at any point in time y'all have a question, just raise your hand and one of us will do our best to answer your questions. Moving into it, this is a quick overview. We'll be talking about staffing, the importance of planning and development, permitting processes, going paperless, ULDO/zoning, the inspectors, and code compliant. Moving into our staff, John Montoya, if you'll stand up. He is our building inspector. He's been with us for 16 years and quite a bit of experience there. Next is Shelby Webster back here. She's our permit tech and has 7 years of experience, but I think we all lean on her. So she's very well appreciated. Johnny Laddick has 10 years with the city of Borger, and he's a code enforcement / supervisor for our right-of-way crew. Last one I'm introducing is Bradley Massengale. He works in our code compliance and has been here just a little over a year. That's our staffing. We do have one new permit tech that's been here about 4 days, and he was unable to join us today. The other picture up there, which includes Kevin, Austin, and Josh. Kevin and Austin are part of our right-of-way crew, which mows our right-of-ways, weed eats them, picks up trash, maintains vacant lots. And then both of them are full-time. And then Josh, he is our part-time alley person. So he drives up and down alleys and picks up bulk. Y'all will see some numbers later in the presentation pertaining to them things. So these are our daily activities. Under planning and development, we got permit processing, plan reviews, building inspections, which include plumbing, electrical, roofing, mechanical, general construction. Under that, we also have 3 boards: Building Standards Commission, Board of Adjustment, and the Planning and Zoning Commission. And under code compliance, identifying and investigating code violations, conducting follow-up inspections, addressing substandard structures, monitoring weeds and high grass, violations addressing junk vehicles, violations addressing trash and debris, and working with property owners toward compliance. Why do we need planning and development? For one, under compliance, there are state and local regulations, local as far as our Code of Ordinances, which can be found online under the City of Borger website. Then responsible community growth. If we didn't have our department, then it would be a free-for-all. And so anybody could build anything they wanted, anywhere they wanted, and it may not affect them, but it probably would affect one of y'all. And so we do run into that a lot where people want to do things and they may or may not get upset with us, but we have to look at the big picture of, first of all, we have regulations for a reason, and so such as setbacks, so that each neighbor can enjoy their neighborhood. Community appearance, reducing blight and eyesores. Later we'll get into some numbers pertaining to the volume of work that we do, but that's the whole ideal of citing people for these violations, is to reduce that blight. Borger has become a very old town. The majority of our town is older housing, and so that stems what we're dealing with. Encouraging consistent development. So that's kind of going back to having these zoning ordinances and building code regulations so that we treat everybody the same. To the best of our ability. That doesn't mean that we don't want to work with people when we can. The only time we can't work with somebody is when it's directly dealing with life safety or we're breaking a state or federal law. There are some limitations there sometimes, but we do our best to work through them issues. Public safety, protecting health and welfare. If we allow somebody to build a structure, and this is just an example, but they do shoddy electrical work and their house catches on fire, well, that very well could affect the next door neighbor. I mean, I think that goes without saying, but these are the reasons why we have a building safety program. So safe building placement and spacing. Part of that is for enjoyment of life. Like I kind of mentioned a while ago, you know, if people were able to build all the way out to the curb, then the next door neighbor would just be looking at that structure and couldn't enjoy their neighborhood. Along with that is the safety part of it. That's why we have setbacks. Like for our side yard setback, it's anything built new, it'd be 5 feet. I've got 5 feet and my neighbor has 5 feet, then you got 10 feet in between there. And that's the general safety zone in residential zone districts to have a safe neighborhood, mainly for fire protection. There's a couple of reasons. You want the fire department to have access through there, and then the closer that structure is to another, the more likely it would catch another one on fire if it did catch on fire. So use of approved construction methods. That's where we start getting into our building codes and the requirements. Any city in Texas that has a population over 5,000 is going to have some type of building safety program. Contrary to Fritcher or Stinnett, with a lower population, they don't have the funds or the manpower to run a building safety program, and so the state don't mandate that with them. They don't mandate every one of our codes that we enforce, but they do mandate a couple of them. Insurance costs drives the rest of us enforcing the codes that we do. We're rated every 4 to 5 years on our building codes and our certifications to get a better rating for everyone's insurance. The fire department is also rated as well, so it's kind of a double thing there. This is a big reason why we have the building codes that we do. So why do we need a permit? I'm going to hand this one over to our permit tech that specializes in this.
Okay, so hello, like he said, I'm Shelby. I am the permit technician, so most of the time I will be your first point of contact if you are coming to our department. And then I will try to help you on my side, and if I can't, I'll get you to one of these 4 gentlemen here and we'll get you an answer. So let's talk about, when do I need a permit? So of course, for remodels, additions, work of that nature, you're gonna know that you need a permit. But there are other times that you might not think about it. When we're building a swimming pool, when we're putting on a new roof or a driveway, or maybe a new fence. So there are some nuances to that. Some things don't require a permit, but if you are ever unsure, definitely give us a call. We end up speaking with a lot of insurance companies over permits and inspections, and so that could come into play down the road to have that inspection from our department. So when in doubt, ask. We are really here to help. Like Larry said, we will work with you to the best of our abilities to help get you what you're wanting to do.
Good evening. John Montoya, building inspector for the city, one of the building inspectors for the city. As the picture is displaying there, you see one on the left with the hole in the roof. That comes over years of negligence. Sometimes people don't know they have a problem with their roof. Maybe it'll get hailed on or something, and then here comes the wind. When it's not attached securely, it'll blow those shingles off, expose it to the elements, and then after years, that wood starts to rot. You don't even understand how important a roof is until that structure starts to give. You look at some of these structures on the highway as you're traveling, and you'll notice that they collapse. And that's what happens a lot of times, is the roof gives out. That routine maintenance that we should all be doing, that we don't take care of, eventually it'll start to deteriorate. The picture on the right is a vent. So a lot of people have probably not ever looked in their attics at their vents. And it's very important, like let's say you have a roofer who comes over to avoid the situation on the left. And in the process, the guys putting up the roof will knock the vents loose. So what happens, let's say for carbon monoxide, it can leak back into the attic, get sucked back into your AC system or your furnace and blow all that carbon monoxide back into the house, making you either get sick or you could even perish from that. I recently dealt with a property where we went in to do it was an AC inspection or something, and I started looking in the attic, and all of their vent from one end to the other was rotted out. So for a long time they'd been getting that carbon monoxide, and when I asked them about they had headaches, she said, yeah, we had been having headaches. Well, that was the reason for it. This was an older house, and those older houses, typically the windows aren't airtight. So I think that's probably what saved these people, is that their house was not airtight and still getting a little bit of fresh air in there. That's some of the things we look for when we go in to do our inspections, is the things that the typical homeowner wouldn't know what to look for.
I would like to add to that just a little bit, and I do appreciate what you've said, John. So, and the reason I'm adding to it is when we do roofing inspections, we do catch a lot of grief because when you come get a roofing permit and then we say, okay, we need to do an inspection, they expect us to come up to the property and just look at the roof. Instead, we also need to go into your homes. One, to verify that you have carbon monoxide detectors placed outside any bedrooms, and then also to check for these vents in the attic coming loose. We have caught several situations. And not only where they're loose, they may be loose from the appliance. So they could be directly involved inside the house, which is even more of a dangerous situation. Sometimes in the attics, you got ventilation up there, and it could go on for quite some time. But inside the house, it could become an immediate danger. So we get a lot of people that are upset, why do you got to come in my house? Well, we don't have to if you really don't want us to, but I promise you, we're only here to help you. The roofer has already done his job. He's responsible for these code requirements. And so we try to encourage people like that, but we still have some people that no, you're not coming in my house. And I promise you, we are just there for the safety of the citizens. So that's why I wanted to add that.
Okay, so most of the time, if you're remodeling or doing an addition, something of that nature, we're gonna ask you for a plan. This, of course, is what we wanna see. We like a nice and neat, legible plan. This is what we have seen. So we don't require anything fancy on most projects. Occasionally we will need an architect or an engineered stamp, but for some of the things that you're doing, a hand-drawn drawing will work for us. As long as it's legible, we can read it. So back in 2018, the city started with a new online system called MyGov. So currently we are using this system for permitting, for scheduling, contractor registration, code enforcement, and business licenses. So this is not only for contractors, it is also for homeowners. And so you are able to get on and request a permit on there, and we will reach out to you and kind of process that permit through there. So part of what we do when you request a permit is to check the zoning. And so you can access our zoning map through www.borgertx.gov/planning. And what this map does, it's actually a very cool map. We use it all the time. But you can see the different colors on the screen. Those are different zoning districts. And so you can see how those zoning districts are set up. If you're looking at a specific property, you can see what that zoning district is for that property. You can also click on a property and it will give you the owner information and also a link to our code of ordinances for anything that may apply to that property. If you ever want to get on there and play and you need some help, let me know. I'd be glad to walk you through it. It is a very neat system that we've come to enjoy. So for permitting, when we first get your permit application, we're going to review for compliance. First of all, check that you have the room or the distance, like Larry mentioned earlier. We're going to check for zoning. If you've supplied your drawing, we're going to check building codes and our code of ordinances to make sure that all of that fits within that and that we don't need to make adjustments somewhere. We'll check and make sure you have a completed application. We're doing the review. So when we do a review, it's going to be most of us four right here. Occasionally, sometimes we will involve the fire marshal if it's going to be a commercial property. And not only that, but we also work with utilities. We're going to work with public works. We're working with every department in the city to make sure that you have what you need as far as your project and that we're going to make sure that it gets done. Again, why inspections matter is, like Larry talked about, citizen safety. We're here to protect you. I know John and Johnny go out, Larry as well. That is the reason we're there, is to make sure everything is to code, that nothing is harmful to you or to your family. But also, like I mentioned, when you go to get a new roof, your insurance company is calling our office, hey, when was the last time they had a permitted roof? When was the last time you inspected that roof? And so there is a whole other side of it that does affect homeowners. And so it is important to get that inspected, not only for your safety, but also for that as well. Okay, so here is a picture of some of our code requirements that we have currently. I don't know if you want to talk about our...
So our code requirements, ceiling insulation, you know, it lists them there. I'm thinking of the big ones we probably see are the ceiling and walls. Do we have the walls in there? Our foundation types. Those are for our energy code. So let's say they're building a new house. We have a certain number that's on that sticker on that window, and it tells you, you know, the U factor, how much it's going to reflect those UV rays to keep the house more efficient and cooling better. When we go to a new build, we look for that number, and if it's way off, then we're going to mention that to them and try to get them to get in compliant. A lot of times though, what we see are additions and people just replacing older windows, so it's hard for us to ask somebody to go out and get that efficient window when the rest of the house really isn't efficient. We do that. The snow load, you don't want your roof to be able to collect too much snow and get heavy, then the roof collapses on you, so we factor that in when we're doing these inspections. Our codes, I was going to bring the books. We have a stack of code books like that, and we probably know 10% of it by heart. But part of like our plumbing license, we have to know how to find the answers as opposed to knowing every single thing. They test you to make sure that you know where to find these answers. So that's pretty much everything in our code books, is that you have to know where to look for something, because as smart as we all look, we don't know everything, right?
That's right.
But that's pretty much it. Yeah.
So before I pass back over to Larry, is there anyone that has any questions? And feel free to ask as they come up. Whatever you have, we'll get you an answer for.
So fence is a good way to start that, because the majority of the time fences does not require a permit. Just calling and ask us could save you some headaches, because even though it doesn't require a permit, there are some requirements. Like, and this is a basic answer, okay? I don't want to get in the whole long drawn out one, but basically in a residential area, when you come past the front of your house, then our ordinance requires that fence to drop down to 42 inches. Now, a lot of times we can let them do it at 48 because everything comes in 4-foot lengths. But anytime that we do that, we do let them know that if someone complains, the ordinance says 42 inches. The other thing is, on fences, a lot of problems occur when you're on a corner lot, because in them situations you have like 2 front yard setback that you have to meet. Most of the time in them situations, then you can't really have anything over that 42 inches on either corner. But to kind of get back to whether you need a permit or not, our building codes say that anything over 7 foot requires a permit. Anything below that does not. Anything over 8 foot requires engineered drawings. Me as the building official can make a decision based on what they're telling me how they're going to build that fence, of whether I actually require that engineered drawing. Anytime you involve engineers, it's going to be expensive. So we do try to work with people, but they would have to work with us as well. And the reason for that height requirement is because the taller the fence, the more wind load against that fence. And so we're not just protecting you, but we're protecting your neighbors as well. So did I answer your question?
But let me ask one more, I'm sorry.
You bet.
If somebody's doing something inside their house, like y'all can't see if you're like driving by to know they're doing,
So yeah, so like I tell people all the time, you know, technically changing a light switch requires you to get a electrical permit. How often are we going to know that? So like we're not out there trying to catch them type of projects, okay? And when I say catch, that's probably not a good word, okay? Because honestly, we are here to help people, not to hinder them. And so we want people to get permits, because if nothing else, we're just one more set of eyes that is looking at that project. I have colleagues in the building trade world that have more experience than I do, but can still make mistakes here and there. And then just that extra set of eyes can be helpful. It can actually be life-saving. And so, of course, this is my livelihood, you know. So I do try to see the other side when I can, but it's normally based on life safety issues. Moving into performance measurements, every year we have to set goals in certain categories. These are some of the ones that we want to highlight today is residential inspections, commercial inspections, and peddler solicitor permits issued. You can tell that the red dotted line is where we should be in the year, and then our goal is that top number. Like for residential inspections, we're expecting to hit 550 inspections. Right now we're at 351. Commercial inspections, our goal was 250 and we're at 214. And the peddler solicitor permits issued, our goal was 23, and that's where we're at. So we'll be ahead of the curve there. So code compliance focus. I'm gonna hit on this just briefly. Well, actually, I've kind of already did that, so I'm gonna turn this over to one of our code inspectors, Johnny Laddick.
Our code compliance focus, our big three that we look for is weeds, junk vehicles, and trash and debris. That keeps us the most busy. Past that, we get into substandard buildings, outdoor storage. That would be more like your commercial properties, keeping whatever outside, pallets of anything and everything, construction material. So this is our process. Now, at the very beginning, whether it be from a complaint or one of us go out and just find a violation, what we do is we approach the violation, we document it, we're going to take pictures of it. We start with our first notice. So we take a picture, we're going to send it to the property owner and whoever is on the utility bill. So we can check our water service. Sometimes one person owns it, another person's renting it. Both of them are going to get a letter. And with that letter, we send a picture of the violation also. That way there's not really any confusion. You're looking at what we're seeing. So after we send that letter, we give them 10 days to come into compliance. So within that 10 days, they can reach out to us, explain the situation. If, they got bad health or something, we can work with them, give them some extra time if they need it, or resources, whatever that they're going to need. So after 10 days, we go back out and we're going to go re-inspect this violation. We pull up. If it's corrected, I'm going to take a picture of it that the violation's no longer there. We close the case and they probably won't hear from us again. If the violation's still there, we can send a second notice. We don't necessarily have to, but we try to. Sometimes you don't get to the mail in time. Something happens where you still don't know that you have a violation. So we send that second notice out, and then we're going to give them 10 more days to come into compliance. And then after that 10 days, we come out, and so we find the violation still there. And this is where we got some options. We can file charges in municipal court, go from there. So they get their charge. They have court quarterly, so it can take up to 3 months before they actually come in and plea for that. We can also take it to Building Standards Commission, and this commission, it's made up of tradesmen, electricians, plumbers, guys that really know building safety. So we're gonna take a case in front of Building Standards. They can ask the people, or not ask them, they can have the people clean their property or take care of the violation, whether it be trash or, fixing a fence, repairing a window, securing their building, whatever it needs to be. Or they can give us the authority to go in there and do that also. So say property owners passed away, we don't have anybody to talk to get to clean up. So we can get that order, we go in there, we do the work, and then after we do the work, we're gonna send them the invoice. And then if that invoice doesn't get paid, then we can file a lien against the property and eventually, hopefully, see some reimbursement after that. So this is kind of just what a basic weed abatement looks like. We had sent these people a couple letters, nothing got taken care of. We're gonna send our guys in there and we're gonna bring it into compliance and then send them the bill. Same type of deal with trash or substandard building. Here, I'll just step to the side.
Yes, these are just some examples of substandard structures. I mean, these are good examples. It's got just about everything we would look for when we're looking for a substandard structure. We do this for the purpose of keeping the community safe, because part of our health and safety that we do try to help out with is also property value. We try to keep property values up, and let's say the guy on the right is trying to sell his house. He's gonna have a hard time selling his house with that next to it. So we do that, and we try to keep the vagrants, out of these places. So we do get these these orders from the Building Standards Commission to go in and demolish these properties, and we have done so many in this town. But along with that, there is federal law that tells us we can only tear one structure down within 600 feet of another. So as you're driving around, you're seeing these properties thinking the city is not doing anything. It's not so much the city, because we want to see this stuff gone too. It's more of a law that doesn't allow us to do that without having to go through the whole asbestos survey process, which is very expensive. So we can only tear one down within 660 feet of another. So let me give you an example. On a street here in town, we have 13 mobile homes that were in that condition of the previous picture. So according to the law, it would have taken us 13 years to clean that block up. Well, we had a fire come in, and coming from the right direction, it caught each one of those substandard structures on fire. And as it went, it only left 2 or 3. So had it not been for that, to this day, we'd still be working on trailers over there one by one.
You only
But
do one a year?
I'm sorry.
One a year?
Within that
Within that.
660 foot.
Yeah. But we,
Even if they're all dilapidated and ran down.
Yeah.
And
that's why you see a lot of so let's say these little communities, I won't name towns by name, but as you're traveling through, you see these little towns and the buildings are just collapsing in on themselves one after another. That's what it is. They've got these laws to abide by, just like we do. And a lot of people don't know that. They just think the city's not taking care of it, but we are out there tearing a lot of properties down every year.
I will say that the state authorities have eased up on us some pertaining to that, and so we've been able to do a little bit more. But that's all. We have respect for each other, okay, and so we got to give him respect if we want respect. So John is correct in what he's saying, and that's actually a federal law that was pushed down to the states to enforce, that then we're expected, to adhere to.
Yeah, and in my trainings, I was taught that those laws came from places like Chicago, Detroit, those big cities that were having major issues, but it has trickled down to our community, and it's hurt us quite a bit.
What was the purpose?
I know that in the areas like Detroit and Chicago, we talked about asbestos. So when you start tearing these buildings down, asbestos gets released into the air, and it's bad for us, But the other thing was, it was like they looked like they were taking out certain communities, like going into lower income communities and tearing them down, and they
Like
started to.
targeting-
I'm sorry.
Like targeting neighborhoods?
Yeah,
Yeah.
which that's not what it was about, but
Get that block for somebody.
yeah.
That and so the bigger volume of asbestos people breathe in, the more likely they're going to have health problems from that. You take a piece of an asbestos piece of pipe and it's just sitting here, there's nothing harmful about it. But when you start busting it up and it becomes friable in the air, well, we're breathing in them particles. So that is part of that law as well, is like the federal government is trying to regulate to where the possibility of that is slimmer based on, the 600 feet.
Any other questions on that? That's something we could talk about for hours.
All right, and these are some of our performance measures for code enforcement. We measure a lot more than this. This is kind of our hot ones. You can see like our active code enforcement cases month by month. We have our targets and then what we've actually met. This year is a little different. Our targets from last year got set pretty high. We had a very wet season last year. Like a month in, we were 4 or 5 foot tall weeds. This year is completely opposite. It was dry up until last week, it seemed like. That's kind of where you see our weed and vegetation down in the bottom right. Our numbers are a lot lower than they were last year. Our junk vehicles are a little bit, they're right on target, it seems like. And then trash and debris also. And some of this also stems from the fact that we've been out there cleaning up. If there's less trash to work, then we're just not going to have the case numbers there. And that also reflects kind of right here. So this is some of our alley crew, the numbers that they do. We have our blocks of alleys cleaned, and then we have the amount of trash that they're actually pulling out of those. And these numbers work kind of inversely. So the more trash that we get rid of, the faster we can get through blocks. So the numbers on the weight of the trash will come down because it's just not there for us to pick up. So we're getting through these alleys, zipping in and out if they're cleared. The weight on the trash, that's weighed in tons. So as of last month, we've picked up 53 tons. So that's 106,000 pounds of trash. And this isn't like what's in your dumpsters. This is couches and refrigerators and dressers and stuff set to the side of the dumpster or out on the side of the road somewhere. Our voluntary compliance program, so we try to help where we can. Self-help trailer and neighborhood cleanup program. So every month, I'm sure y'all have seen on Facebook where Deidre advertises our neighborhood cleanup and where it's going to be. This month it's in Gateway. We'll have a trailer set at that little triangle park right next to Toot and Totem, and then one more on the park at Keith and Elmore Street. We'll leave that there over the weekend. You can fill it up, clean out your garage, clean out your backyard. We also offer a lawn care kit. So we were noticing with some of these weed cases, people were calling in, hey, our mower's broken, we just don't have a mower. So the city decided to help provide that. So we give a push mower, a weed eater, a string trimmer. We also have a push string trimmer that'll handle some of the heavier duty weeds. And that's all free of charge. You come up here, as long as you got an active water account, you come up here, you fill out an application, we take a copy of your ID, and we bring this stuff out to you, gassed up. We bring you extra string, extra fuel, drop it off, let you use it. We come back and we pick it up from you. We also have, it's not mentioned on here, oh yeah, it is self-help trailer. So you can call the transfer station and request a bulk trailer. And what they do is they come, they used to do roll-offs, and this has kind of replaced those. These are easier to move around. We parked this trailer in front of your house, and there again, load it up, throw your couches, whatever you need to in there. There is some restrictions on it. You can't put construction material in.
Or you do charge the full amount.
Yeah.
And it is for residential use only,
Yes.
not commercially.
Actually had somebody call down with a business that wanted to use it for a few days.
Yeah, and I think those trailers probably stay out 24/7, huh?
Usually.
And then at the end, we got Operation Facelift. And what this is to try to help with some of the substandard buildings. So you own a house and it needs to be torn down, but you just cannot afford to do it. Everyone's quoted you $10,000, $20,000. So you come in and you talk to us, and what you're going to do is you're going to sign a contract with us to allow us to tear it down, and you're going to get it at a greatly reduced rate. Once we lock in that price, that's the price. You know, it's not going to go up. It may come under. If it comes under, and you might get a break cut, but it'll never go over that price. That allows us to go in there, we tear it down, we're going to get it nice and cleaned up, and then the property is still yours. We're just getting rid of the structure itself.
That also helps us because then the paper trail is very short. One piece of paper. Otherwise, when we're doing substandard structures and tearing them down involuntarily, then not only do we have to go through the building standards to get their order, but we also have to put all the paperwork together to take to the judge and Stinnett for her to sign that seizure warrant for us. One of the reasons, in a lot of towns, the municipal judge is able to do that. With us being a smaller town, our municipal court is not a court of record. And so that has to be done through a court of record. And so that's why we had to go to the county to get that seizure warrant to do involuntarily substandard structure demolishing.
It does give us a little more time to work on it too. With those seizure warrants, we're at 30 days from start to finish to return that warrant. So if we get rain and it shuts down the transfer station, that shuts down our job. And, you know, we need every one of those 30 days that we can get. So if we could sign a facelift, that gives us a little bit longer. We still want to get it done in less than a month as soon as possible, but unforeseen circumstances happen. That gives us a little bit of wiggle room.
So when you go through and go get the paperwork to tear it down, do people still own the land? Or do they just have to pay it? Do y'all seize, does it take the land?
Yeah, it's just the structure that we seize. The only time that's different is when one of the entities already owns the property through taxes. If most of the time it is they still own the property, they're still responsible for mowing it, you know, still responsible for paying taxes and all that afterwards.
And
So
as long as the lien is paid off on it, then it goes back to them. The owner retains.
Yeah. The owner still retains ownership up until the time they try to sell the property, and then that's when them liens are caught at that time. They would have to satisfy them liens before they could sell the property legally.
We got our Building Standards Commission that we talked about earlier.
I'll take over.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, so these are the three boards that were mentioned earlier. The Building Standards Commission, y'all have already heard a little bit, but they're a group of 7 different people, and as mentioned earlier, you know, they're licensed electricians. You know, one of our guys has been in the building trade for almost as old as I am. Let's see, licensed plumbers are on the board. And then people that are just generally been around construction type business. So they hear the cases when we bring them, either a substandard structure or a property that just needs to be cleaned up and we need permission to go abate that problem. By our city ordinance, we have to go through Building Standards Commission first and get their blessing. There's been a lot of cases over the years that stays in building standards for a long time. We want that because that's showing that we're trying to work with people. It's not that we want to go tear down buildings. It's not that we want to go pick up their trash per se. But especially buildings, you know, we don't want to just go tear down all these buildings. You know, we want to see them, you know, remodeled and brought back to life. Anyway, that's a very good board there. You can pretty much bet that the Building Standards Commission is going to meet every month. Whereas the Board of Adjustment, which is the next group, so the Board of Adjustment hears appeals from citizens regarding to either administrative decisions or zoning variances. 99.9% of them are zoning variances, and it normally has to deal with people want carports out in that front yard setback that I kind of mentioned earlier. I don't blame people for wanting a carport, and so I try to have some understanding. The only thing with that is by state law, they're required to show some kind of hardship as to why they can't comply with that ordinance. You know, can they put that carport in their backyard? Can they put it somewhere else that complies? And if that's the case, then more than likely they don't have a hardship unless it's some type of medical hardship. Once again, pretty good board there, and they also try to work with people as well. You know, anybody that applies to go in front of that board, I try to give them their odds. Is it pretty obvious that you can comply somewhere else, you know? And, you know, if that's the case, I'm like, you know, you might want to think about, because we do have processing fees for them to go in front of this board. It's not a ton of money, but, you know, anywhere from $160 to, $165, and then $1 for every notice. You know, so there is a little bit of money involved in asking to go through that process, and there's never a guarantee. You know, they can still say no. The other time you can ask to come in front of the Board of Adjustment is, say I make a decision as a building official, then they can appeal to this board. The only time by law that they are allowed to appeal is when it's not a life safety situation. It had to be something outside life safety. Now we come into the Planning and Zoning Commission. The Planning and Zoning Commission looks at plats, and plats are when someone has a piece of property and they want to develop it inside the city limits. By city ordinance, they're required to plat that property, and by meaning that means they would need a lot number and a block number and an addition number. Sometimes those can be extensions of already established neighborhoods, or they can have, in other situations, it would be just they would have their own plat name. Kind of for an example, out in the Buena Vista area, like I don't know how many Fair Lanes additions that we have, but it's several, because it was developed slowly. So they would do, you know, a few blocks or whatever, and that would be a certain number of Fair Lanes, and then, you know, another 5 years would come along and it'd get developed a little more. And so there's several names there. Sometimes it's just a square lot out in the middle of nowhere, and it doesn't really fit into any certain addition, so they get their own addition name at that time. So the other times that you would come in to visit with Planning and Zoning Commission is if you were requesting a rezone of your property. Our office would guide you in them aspects of whether it's even legally possible to. I can tell you that for most of my career, the only way that you could rezone your property is that you had to be adjacent to the property that you wanted to rezone to. Residential area, commercial area. If you wanted yours to be commercial, then you had to have something adjacent to your property that was commercial before you could rezone. Other than that, it would be called spot zoning, and that's not allowed by state law. It's still not allowed by state law. But the state has given some more tools to us to work with. We have a zoning map, and then we have a future land use map. If it's not adjacent to something, we as staff can look at that and say, even though there's nothing adjacent, we agree that probably should be that zoning district. So the state says if you have a future land use map, you can first change that future land use map, and then that property owner would be allowed to rezone to that other zoning district based on our future land use map. Probably sounds a little confusing, but it's a tool that the state has given us to work with the public and for the city benefit as well. So the other reason that you'd go in front of planning and zoning is specific use permits. Most of the time when we see these are dealing with manufactured houses. In the city limits of Borger, we have one zoning district where manufactured houses are allowed, semi-urban, which is one of our residential areas. We have, the second one is GR, and in the GR, manufactured housing is not allowed. By federal laws, you have to allow them somewhere. So we allow them in the semi-urban residential zone district, but they still have to get a special use permit through planning and zoning to be able to do that. And that's all that is about, is protecting people's property values. There's a lot of times when I felt like a manufactured house should go there and they should approve it, but the neighbors come in and say, no, we don't want that manufactured house in our neighborhood. And they have that right. And so the board takes a look at that and says, you know, we're not going to approve it. When there are no complaints and the city appears to be on board as well, then generally the board would approve them situations. Any questions about any of our boards? They are all 3 7-member boards. We're always needing extras as to fill in at times. So if any of y'all are ever interested in serving on one of them boards, please come see us and we'll get you fill out an application. So we're at the end, huh? All right. So do y'all have any questions?
Can I ask just, what is like the rule about, and I know it's summer or spring and everyone's trying to get, but these people that are like keeping their fifth wheels and their campers out on the side of the
Oh, good
or
question.
their boats,
Good
or
question.
these cars that have been sitting there.
So,
I hate to be that way, but when something is exactly like right there, it's all the time.
so a lot of times these trailers are sitting out in the street. You got to drive around them, right? So the only thing that we have on ordinance that we can enforce is, so let's take a residential street, okay? They're generally anywhere from 32 to 36 foot wide. The ordinance says that when that trailer is parked there on the street, it still has to leave 10 foot of lane in that lane. We go out and measure, okay? So we measure back of curb to back of curb, find the center line, and then from that center line to that RV, there has to be 10 feet. If there's 10 feet there, there's nothing we can do. The only other thing that we have in our ordinance is when people park some of these larger type vehicles on their own property, and in residential zone districts specifically, then there is a section where we can enforce that if needed. But on the streets, that 10 foot is all we have to deal with. I will tell you that actually when Garrett Spradling was on city council, an ordinance was created and introduced to city council and had a big town hearing. A lot fuller than this room is tonight. The only people that showed up was the ones that wanted to keep their RVs out on the street. And so that ordinance was tabled and never brought back up. It's disheartening at times, but that's what we had to deal with.
What about the old vehicles that are broke down just sitting there?
So that's where we were talking about junk vehicles. earlier, there is certain criteria. Johnny, you want to
Yeah.
hit on that a little more?
Yeah.
The criteria for a junk vehicle?
So it needs to run and drive under its own power at the very least. We got several different ways that we can assess that if it's a junk vehicle or not. As simple as an out-of-date sticker, but we wouldn't work it off of that, you know. We need to see, I personally would want to see at least a couple things, you know, some flat tires, some weeds growing around it showing that it hasn't been moved in a while. It can be missing parts off of it, broken windows. We'll go and we can work a junk vehicle a couple different ways, as a public nuisance or just as a junk vehicle. We're going to put a sticker on it and try to tow it. So whenever we do that, we sticker it. There again, we take our pictures, we send it to the property owner, wherever the property is. We're going to send it to the vehicle owner. If anyone has a lien or a loan against that vehicle, we send it to anybody that has an interest in the vehicle. So sometimes we're sending out 5 or 6 letters for one car. So after we sticker it, we're going to give it some time before we actually tow. It's going to be 30 days, you know. And at that point, if we haven't had any contact with anybody, nobody's tried to show us that the vehicle runs, drives, hasn't tried to move it or anything, then we'll call, we take that to the judge and she'll give us a warrant to remove the vehicle. We take that warrant to one of the wrecker services and they come pick it up, and then we get them a demolisher title, and that vehicle will never go on the road again. It has to be used for parts only or demolished.
Kind of going back, oh, I was on the wrong one. Oh, no, there it is.
Yeah,
so
top right.
Going back to this, as of right now, we've worked 71 junk vehicles this year.
Please keep in mind that it's not the month of May, it's just through the end of April. So we would have more pieces by the time.
Yeah. And most of the time they're not going to get towed off. That's usually whenever we get a quick reaction from somebody. Usually vehicles, they're a investment. That's a chunk of money that somebody invested into that, so they don't want to lose it. We allow for one junk vehicle on the property, but it's got to be behind a screening fence, so like a picket fence, something you can't see from the public right away, or it can be in their garage, and that's usually where they wind up.
I do welcome any time that you have any more questions, just want to come in and visit. Feel free to come into our office. Like Shelby said, you'll probably see her first. So.
Or if you call, you'll probably get myself or Steve, but we'd be glad to answer any questions.
Right.
I am going to step out. I'll get you some cards, so if you want to take one of our cards, give us a call or send us an email.
All righty. I think we're done with our part.